You woke up this morning. Maybe you made coffee. Maybe you checked your phone before your eyes were fully open. Maybe you sat by a window and watched light move across the floor. That slow, patient crawl that happens every single morning, in every home, on every continent, without fail. That light came from the sun. It left the sun's surface 8 minutes and 20 seconds before it touched your floor. It traveled 93 million miles through the vacuum of space, hit your window glass, bent slightly, and landed exactly where you were sitting. You didn't think about any of that. You just felt warm. We don't think about the sun. Not really. It's there. It rises. It sets. It gives us vitamin D and sunburns, and the reason we have a concept of a day at all. It is so constant, so dependable, so utterly ordinary in our lives that we have stopped seeing it entirely. But here is what you need to understand before we go any further. The sun is not ordinary. The sun is a nuclear explosion that has been happening continuously for 4.5 billion years. Right now, at this exact moment, the sun's core is fusing 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium every single second. 600 million tons per second. It has been doing this since before the Earth existed, before the oceans, before the first single-celled organism divided itself into two and became, in the most distant sense imaginable, your ancestor. The sun is the oldest and most powerful thing you will ever have a relationship with. And it is going to die. Not metaphorically, not eventually, in some vague way that doesn't concern us. The sun will die in a specific sequence of events that scientists have mapped out in extraordinary detail. We know the stages. We know the timescales. We know what happens to everything in this solar system when it does. And here's the part that should stop you cold. When the sun finally ends, when it swells into a red giant large enough to swallow Mercury, Venus, and most likely Earth itself, every trace of humanity that ever existed on this planet will be gone. Not archived somewhere, not encoded in a signal drifting through the cosmos. Gone. As if the entire project of human civilization, every city, every painting, every name ever whispered or carved or remembered, simply never happened. That is not a horror story. That is physics. But before you close this window or reach for your phone or find something more comfortable to look at, stay with me for a moment. Because the death of the sun is not the most confronting thing about this story. What confronts me every time I sit with this is the question underneath it. If all of it ends, if the buildings fall and the records burn and the oceans boil and the atmosphere strips away and nothing remains, then what were we doing here? What does any of it mean? What does your morning mean? The coffee, the light on the floor, the specific and irreplaceable texture of your particular life, if the universe eventually erases the evidence that it happened? That question has no comfortable answer, but it has an honest one. And to get to it, we have to start with a star. The sun is 1.4 million kilometers across. Say that number, 1.4 million kilometers. Now try to feel it. You can't. The human brain did not evolve to feel numbers that large. We evolved to track predators across a savanna, to judge the distance between our hand and a piece of fruit, to understand spaces we could walk across in a day. 1 million of anything is already past our emotional comprehension. 1 million kilometers is simply noise. So here is how to feel it instead. If you could drive a car at highway speed, 100 kilometers per hour, directly toward the sun, it would take you 1,600 years to reach it. Your great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren would still be driving. The Roman Empire would rise and fall twice over before you arrived. And the sun, in the scale of stars, is not even particularly large. It is a yellow dwarf, a mid-sized, middle-aged, unremarkable star. There are stars in our galaxy, UY Scuti, Stephenson 2-18, so large that if you place them where the sun sits, their surface would extend past the orbit of Saturn. Saturn, a planet so far from us that when we sent the Voyager 1 spacecraft past it in 1980, traveling at 60,000 kilometers per hour, it had already been flying for 3 years. These stars make the sun look like a marble dropped next to a hot air balloon. But we are not talking about those stars. We are talking about ours, because ours is the one that matters to this story, the one that built us, feeds us, and will, in its own time, end us. Right now, the sun is in the middle of its life. It is approximately 4.6 billion years old. It has, under current models, approximately 5 billion years of hydrogen fuel remaining in its core. 5 billion years sounds like forever, and it is not. It is approximately the same amount of time that has already passed, which means the sun is, in cosmic terms, middle-aged. We are living in the sun's afternoon. For the next several billion years, nothing dramatic will happen. The sun will continue burning, will slowly and incrementally brighten, about 10% brighter per billion years, and life on Earth will adapt, as it has always adapted, or it will not. But then something changes. When the hydrogen in the sun's core runs out, the core will begin to collapse under its own gravity. This collapse generates heat. That heat ignites a shell of hydrogen around the core, and that ignition pushes the outer layers of the sun outward, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, until the sun has expanded into something unrecognizable, a red giant. The sun will grow to approximately 200 times its current size. At that scale, it will consume Mercury, it will consume Venus, and the Earth, our pale blue dot, our only home, the place where every human who has ever lived was born and died, will most likely be engulfed. Let that sit for a moment. The ground beneath your feet, the soil where things grow, the bedrock of every mountain range, the floor of every ocean, the foundation of every building ever constructed, all of it inside a star. But here is the fact that hits differently. By the time the sun reaches red giant phase, the Earth's surface will have become uninhabitable long before that final absorption. In roughly 1 billion years, a timeline that feels abstract until you realize humans as a species have only existed for about 300,000 years. The sun's increasing brightness will have raised Earth's surface temperature enough to evaporate the oceans. The water cycle will collapse. The atmosphere will begin to strip. Life, if anything remains, will retreat underground or cease entirely. 1 billion years. Humanity has existed for 0.03% of that time. We are not even a rounding error in the lifespan of the system we were born in. And yet, here is where it gets strange, where the science stops being a horror story and becomes something else entirely. The sun's death will not be purely destructive. When a star like the sun dies, it does not simply turn off. After the red giant phase, the outer layers are expelled into space as a beautiful, expanding cloud of gas and dust called a planetary nebula. What remains of the core collapses into a white dwarf, a dense, Earth-sized remnant that slowly cools over billions of years, eventually becoming a black dwarf, a cold, dark object drifting through space, carrying the memory of everything it once was. The material in that expelled cloud, the carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen, the heavy elements forged across 4.6 billion years of nuclear fusion, will drift through the galaxy. It will cool, it will clump, and in some distant, unimaginable future, in some region of space we cannot point to, that material may collapse under gravity into a new star, with new planets orbiting it, possibly with new chemistry, possibly with what we would recognize, in some form, as life. The sun does not end. It transforms. And everything that was ever part of this solar system, including, in the most literal atomic sense, you, becomes part of that transformation. Which brings us to the question we've been circling since the beginning. If the sun will die, and the earth will be consumed, and everything we've built will be destroyed, why did any of it happen? What was the point? There is a concept in physics called entropy. The universe moves, always, from order to disorder, from structure to chaos, from stars to dust. This is not a preference. It is not a flaw in the design. It is the design. The second law of thermodynamics is one of the most ironclad principles in all of science. And what it tells us is that everything organized will eventually become unorganized. Everything built will eventually become rubble. Everything lit will eventually go dark. The universe tends toward silence, and for a long time, this felt to me like the most devastating thing science ever revealed. If entropy always wins, if every star dies, every planet cools, every civilization ends, then what is the point of the brief, burning, improbable interruption of structure that we call life? But I have come to think that question contains a mistake. The mistake is assuming that meaning requires permanence. Think about what the sun actually is. It is a temporary arrangement of hydrogen and helium that formed from the collapse of an ancient molecular cloud, itself the remnant of an older star that died before our solar system existed. The heavy elements in the sun, in the earth, in your body, were forged in the cores of stars that lived and died before the sun was born. We are, and in the most literal possible sense, made from dead stars. We did not appear from nothing. We are the continuation of something. When you look at the sun, when that 8-minute-old light hits your floor in the morning, you are looking at the engine that took the raw material of old stellar deaths and built something new, built an atmosphere, built liquid water, built the conditions for a 4 billion year experiment in chemistry that eventually produced brains capable of looking back at the star and understanding what it is. That has never happened before. In the 13.8 billion years since this universe ignited into existence, the sun's death will not be the first. It will not be the last. But the fact that it happened here in this solar system, with these planets, and produced creatures who can grieve the fact that it will end, that is not insignificant. That is extraordinary. Because the universe does not, as far as we can tell, do this everywhere. We have found no other civilization, no other signal, no evidence yet of another place where the carbon and the water and the warmth arranged themselves just so, and something looked up. We may be rare. We may be the only place in this galaxy, possibly in the observable universe, where the sun's gift produced something that could appreciate it, and we will be gone. Not just us, the sun, the earth, all of it. But here is what the physics also tells us, and this is the part I want you to hold. The atoms in your body will not be destroyed when the earth is consumed. They cannot be. Matter does not disappear. The carbon in your bones, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your teeth, all of it will be part of the red giant, part of the planetary nebula, part of the new dust that drifts across the galaxy for billions of years until gravity pulls it into something new. You are not the end point of this process. You are the middle of it. The sun is not our parent. It is our context. It built us the way a river builds a canyon, not intentionally, not lovingly, but necessarily. We are what happens when a star exists in the right place, for the right amount of time. We are the universe's way of briefly, improbably knowing itself. And that is temporary. It has always been temporary. Every civilization that ever rose on this planet, every name that was ever important enough to carve in stone, every idea that felt permanent, it was always passing through, not despite that. Because of that, the morning light on your floor is real precisely because it ends. The people you love are irreplaceable precisely because you will lose them. The fact that this all disappears, that the sun will swell and the oceans will evaporate, and the last record of anything human will be absorbed into a dying star, does not make your morning meaningless. It makes it the only thing that matters. We were always temporary. The sun told us that from the beginning. We just weren't listening. But you are here, right now, made from the light of something ancient, living inside the window of something brief, carrying in your body the material of stars that died before the earth existed. The universe built you to feel this.